so we're going to talk about, learning from Asia and all this stuff. But, first off, just to set the stage, I feel like a lot of times the media always trying to write about Asia versus US and China versus this. And honestly, I think most of these media is about, just wanted to create news and enemy, right? But at the same time, I really think that especially in a tech conference, we should be really here to learn from the best. And I think right now, startup ecosystem, I'm really into blockchain these days, is all about the world. It's not just one is better than the other. And in fact, every single vertical, there are amazing developer and entrepreneurs from all over the world. So hopefully today we have two awesome panelists. And one, Victor is more on the investor side, Renee is more on the founder entrepreneur side. We can learn as much from them as possible and learn from the best. All right, to start a month ago, Michael Morris wrote this really interesting article on Financial Times and how Silicon Valley needs to wake up and learn from China. So what do you guys think about this article? I actually say I love this article, and I got a lot of hate mail of hey, how can you say that? So Victor, start with you. What do you think about that whole opinion from Michael Morris?
I think the article has its merits. I mean, some of it is true, and some of it is a bit too exaggerated. I think China is in a stage where people are trying to ramp up growth, right? They're in a very hungry phase of development, and at this time everyone is really trying to go crazy. So I've been a startup founder before. I work in a private company. I work with government. And when we first start out, everyone works like crazy. We pull all-nighters, But man, I'm pretty old now. I don't pull all-nighters anymore because I can't. I can't physically do it, So I think it has to do with the development of the ecosystem. It has to do with the development of the companies and also in terms of the level of income inequality within the system too. And eventually, on the types of innovations that the country has access to. Right, so all that affects the way people want to pursue their goals and dreams. In Singapore, we started to develop the startup ecosystem about 4 or 5 years ago, right? And it was crazy. Right now, 5 years ago, if you go to Singapore, I think there were some funds, there were some companies, there were some founders. But right now, you go, there's a whole lot of funds, there's too much money, and everyone wants to be a founder, right? And everyone's working hard. They're going crazy. We have a crazy work ethic. We work late, but we also party really hard, right? So I think there has to be a balance when it comes to something like this. I mean, if I was to be published in an article, I would go crazy and talk about an extreme view like Mike. But I think there has to be some balance eventually. Yeah.
I agree and not agree with Victor. And actually, to be honest, I just read about the article. I think every single detail mentioned in that article actually is true. I mean, in China, not only startup, even mature companies with more than 10 years, still people's working there, still, working longer hours. Before we call it 996, now we call it 24/7. And it means always stand by, 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. It's it's crazy. And I think the story behind that, I think is because, take me for example, and I do have a lot of friends and relatives who is very successful, grow from nobody to a very wealthy or successful businessman within a very short period of time, because China's economic is growing so quickly during the decades. So not only me, all my friends, all the people who joined startup or who founded a startup has similar experience. And I take Mark Cuban, for example, he is very successful and very can inspire the people, but he's far away from most of us. But image, if you just have a very close friend and who just have similar experience or get a similar success, just like Mark Cuban, you get more personal and emotional connections because of all this learning from those practices, and you want to go through the journey yourself as well. So this happened to all my friends in China. So this is kind of like, and all these people again to drive even more faster, innovation and startup environment in China. I think this is the path.
So to summarize, basically, all the Asian work like a dog. And this is Year of the Dog in the Chinese zodiac, so definitely very relevant. And Singapore basically party hard and work really hard. And it's very, very true. It's no longer just 996, it's 24/7, which is very true. Like anytime I text any of these guys, I reply any time of the day, which is crazy. But in all seriousness, if, as an American, like what are some, like let's say name one thing that, we really should learn from Asian like founders.
Hello. Maybe just to add on one point to what she was saying previously, I think it's also about the environment, the people around you, your peers, right? If you're in an environment where everyone is working like a boiler room, you feel pressure to actually want to do it the same way. Like up here, I mean, like if Twitter, Facebook didn't have all these benefits, the guys at the smaller companies wouldn't be expecting that, right? So I think it's become an expectation. Whereas like out in Asia, you don't get those kinds of benefits everywhere. So I think it's also about like peer pressure and also the environment you're in. So going back to the second question, which is one
thing that I should learn from Asian founders.
I think Asian founders, because of the nature of the market, have to go global from day one. And they always think globally about product development. They think globally about how they make money. Those who don't think global enough, generally the companies will fail, right? There are exceptions, of course, but I think having a global mindset to how you want to develop your company is important from day one, and that kind of grows eventually, right? Yeah.
And
actually, I think like because now we have offices in China and in Silicon Valley, and I travel in between both offices every 2 weeks. So I think both teams can learn from each other. And compared to our US team members, and I think our Chinese team members and also some Chinese startups, they are more flexible. And they are more following the path of ready, fire, and then aims. They become like they're changing very fast, and they are really looking for opportunities. I think the story behind that, because the Asian, or especially China, the China market is bigger, and we have like 4 times the population. The population is 4 times compared to US, and the mobile adopters is like 3 times compared to US mobile users, and we have more talents and with lower operation cost. So because, for example, like for every year, new grads from China is like we have 2 times compared to US, and we have 8 times of new grads who have like kind of science or technology background, who can begin with tech engineering or begin with like kind of like this kind of tech companies. So, and it's kind of like a cost the operation and easier to hiring more talents. So this is because we are more flexible because of market, because of operation cost. So we have more chance to take more opportunities to trial and to fail.
So on this note, I want to get a little bit into the details, right? So like there isn't really, sure, like I agree there's global mindset for Asian, but you don't see a lot of very successful, like WeChat never really made it, like in the US, but there's one recently, Musical.ly, and just got bought by Toutiao for almost $1 billion. What do you think about that?
Actually, we think about that a lot things. To be honest, before the startup, I used to work for Google and to provide account management for mobile developers all over the world. From the traffic and the revenue side, Chinese developers is the #1 source of all the traffic or revenue gain from. I mean, like even more than US people, but even more than US startups. But if we think about like some high branding ones, I mean, we cannot think even one of them. So as you mentioned, Musical.ly is an example, DJI is maybe another example, but it begins to have some kind of cases, but still most like Chinese developers or Chinese startups, they are not good at kind of like a very deep localization and branding. So I think this is the two areas. I mean, they should learn from the US startups or US teams. Yeah, but still you can see the trend. People began more adopt to the market, especially to the global markets.
Victor, can you comment a little bit about the SoftBank Vision Fund? Like they have deployed about 98 billion so far, and pretty much all the famous, U.S. startups been.
I think if you look at the deployment of funds across the world, a lot of money is actually going to Southeast Asia, right? Because if you look at Southeast Asia as a region, it's actually where China is about maybe 9-10 years ago, in terms of internet use, in terms of the number of people using the internet, in terms of the level of activity online, right? And a lot of the funds see that, so they're trying to set up a foundation now to prepare for that crazy, massive growth, in the next 8 to 10 years, right? Because if you wanted to go into China right now, I don't think you can afford any of the companies because the valuations are so high. I mean, the valuations in China are way higher than the U.S. even, So I mean, like where is the next bastion of growth that all these people are looking for? Every company needs to keep growing, right? The Googles, the Facebooks, they need to deploy the capital somewhere, right? The big investment firms, they need to deploy. They need to look to keep deploying. So where to deploy, right? So I think Southeast Asia itself, in terms of the BRIC countries, right? Southeast Asia is actually bigger than Brazil and the total population of Southeast Asia is about 600 million. By 2020, we will have about 480 million people online, right, on a smartphone, not on an MTK. Everyone's going to be on a smartphone, right? And 90% of the population accesses the internet on the smartphone. So you're talking about a very homogeneous mode of access. The methods of monetization are a bit different, right? Because you're talking about low quality but high quantity. So you need to be able to kind of change your models to address companies that are doing micro transactions, right? So everything has to change in terms of how you think about the market. So a company that thinks only U.S. first, right, may not work as well eventually in Southeast Asia or other parts of the world without a lot of heavy localization.
Okay, so I'm going to flip it the other way around. Even though we say, hey, Silicon Valley should be really afraid, having said that, there's still a lot of amazing company come from the Valley. What are some of the things that you think, like one thing that Asians should learn from the Valley? How about coming from an investor?
So coming from the investor segment, I think like funds in the Valley should be a bit more open to investments outside of the Valley. So I'm not sure if you guys know, but generally investors in the U.S. Most of the investments happen only in the U.S., right? So they don't really look out at companies outside of the U.S. just because all the best guys are here, But Asian investors are very open to investing anywhere, just because I think they see value in companies in a lot of different countries. Anything that makes them money, makes sense to them, right? So I think being able to be bit more global in terms of deployment of your funds and kind of like your strategy makes sense, and eventually creating that network so that you can provide value to your portfolios in all parts of the world.
Wait, you're still saying that Asian investor is better?
Oh, oops.
How about the other way around?
That's a slip. Maybe Renee should go first.
I should go first. So I think I actually have mentioned a little bit about the branding building or the storytelling behind every company and every startup. I mean, I think to be honest, if you see like during the past like decades in US, US outsourcing a lot of engineering things into India and outsourcing a lot of manufacturing things into China. And all the people here, they are very professional on marketing, on sales, and on the brand building, PR things. And all this kind of like industry, when I just landed here last year, I can see there's a big gap between China and the US market. So this is like, I think all the Chinese companies should learn, or like, and also other Asian companies should learn from the US.
Okay. Hello? Okay. Sorry about the slip. I think the one thing that Asian investors need to kind of like brush up on is also on the fact that they're very numbers based, right? I think the Asian VC ecosystem is made up of people who are ex finance industry, right? So most of the way they look at companies is based on pure numbers. Right, whereas like so there are not enough operator VCs out in Asia, or in Southeast Asia at least. I think in the US there's a lot more operator VCs which understand what it means to actually found a company. And you don't judge a company just by its numbers, especially at the early stages, right? So like you want to go into a company because you believe that the founder can do it. You believe in the idea, and sometimes it's a bit of a gut feel. Versus just that, hey man, you're burning too much every month. Hey, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, I think that's something that we need to learn, and I feel that will come, as we get involved and do more deals and start seeing companies that evolve along the growth change. We will be able to get more of a gut feel, get more successful entrepreneurs into venture firms and making these investments on early bets, right? Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of things going on outside of the U.S. that folks in the audience may or may not know. So like Tencent actually bought Supercell for like over $8 billion. This actually have nothing to do with the U.S. And then on top of that, Alibaba acquired Lazada, which is all going down to Southeast Asia. Again, like Google or Amazon is not even part of this picture. So there's a lot of things that is happening that I think in Silicon Valley we should be aware and learn from. So I know some of my fellow colleagues started to think about going to Asia. Any suggestion or advice, if we just wanted to think about China or think about Southeast Asia, what would be like the first few steps I should take to even go about, approaching Asian markets?
I think the biggest advice is find the local partner and hiring local people. I mean the market and especially the environment or working environment is so different between China and the US, and especially if you see all the foreigner companies when they go to China, most of them fail, and the only one successful is they find a really good, local CEO or really good local partner, and then they begin to scale their business. So this is what we can learn from each other. Yeah.
So I agree and disagree on that too. Yes, you need to look for a local partner, but sometimes a local partner is the first person to screw you, right? So and it's funny because I just spoke to like a founder from the U.S. who went to Indonesia to want to work with a telco, right? And I said, so bro, did you get the deal done, right? And did you find a local partner? And did he help you? And did you get screwed? Right. So he said, I think I got both. I found a local partner who screwed me, and I'm still working with him, right? Because so this guy is like related to the telco. He handles all the telco connections, right? And this guy and the entrepreneur really wants to work with him, but without a local who can actually negotiate with that local, he doesn't know if he's getting a fair deal. He feels he's getting screwed, but there's nothing he can do about it. So that's going to be the situation that most foreigners will get into. Like, am I getting screwed? I don't know, right? I'll find out later on. So that's my own experience too. So yeah. So finding a good, reliable partner is one, but not trusting the partner too much is also one.
Okay, it sounds like that either we definitely need a partner, but a lot of people are trying to screw me. So then how do I go about finding the right partner?
Sorry for your experience.
Hello. I guess it's about hanging out in the community long enough and actually being able to create a network of people that you trust, right? That takes time. So I spent like 3 years in China. I went in like cold. I did not know anyone. I just drank my liver off, and then made a lot of friends along the way, good ones and bad ones, right? So we just have to be smart about it. But I think creating that trusted network of people that can actually help you to verify these resources is important. You will never be able to land in the country and do a deal in like 10 days or even a month, because that kind of deal is not going to be the best deal you do. right? Obviously. But yeah, so I think it's about creating the community, working with people that you trust that can be verified by other contacts you already have. That's a smart way of doing it. And going back to the question, right? So that wasn't my answer. But my answer is Asia is big. I mean, like, you know, when I came to America, the one thing, I've been here for 5 years, and the one thing that still baffles me every day is like, you know, like, hey, he's Asian. Like Asia is not just about Asia, you know, it's much bigger than that, right? We have countries, you know, and I would look at Asia with a different lens. This is how I used to advise, you know, companies like Dropbox, you know, Google, who are thinking about making that kind of expansion out. Look at Asia in terms of pieces, right? If you look at the walled gardens, right? So you have China, you have India, Japan, and Korea. Right? These 4 countries individually is a big enough market for you, because the challenges in each of those countries is enough for, like, you know, one stage of your life. And then Southeast Asia is usually the toughest part, because Southeast Asia is made up of, like, you know, 9, 10 countries, everyone speaking a different language, you know, with payment systems that don't talk to each other, you know, and all sorts of funny things, right? So figure out which part of Asia you need to be in, you know, and kind of understand where your market is, right? I think that's important, right? Like for some companies, it could be Japan or Korea. It could be China, in fact, if you have big enough dreams, you know. But for some guys, it could be Southeast Asia because it's so early, right? You get a first move advantage. You know, you get to move in really quickly. People need a lot of new products outside of the e-commerce and all the old, you know, e-commerce stuff. There's a lot more opportunity, right? So find the right market, hone in on it, find a trusted network. You know, it takes time. You know, you need to go in, hang out, you know, and just make friends, right? I think that's what it's all about.
To answer your question, I think my suggestion would be, I mean, how to finding the good partner. I think maybe the first step is finding some top branded local investor. I mean, which is for them, they can help you to introduce, because they vote you by money. So they have to trust the company, they have to contribute to the company, and they can benefit from the company's growth. So some of my friends, like startup who want to join China market, they begin with finding a top branded, you know, investors first. And then the investor helps them to find a local partner or local CEO or local hiring.
So a really quick comment, and then I think we have time for like one question, and which is, I think sometimes really depends on what you guys are working on. It could be B2B or B2C. I think B2C going to China is very hard. I almost want to say forget about it. But on B2B, sometimes like I have a few more suggestions in addition to finding local partner and local investor, is actually look at your existing customer base. There's a lot of international conglomerate that already have Asian offices and branches, and it's so much easier to ask your US paying customer to introduce you to their Asian counterpart, because the US already started using it, and they usually like to follow the US in terms of what they use. So that's a good start in terms of, you know, have some, just to see what kind of revenue and customer traction that you get, and then at the same time find local partner and investor and all go in together at the same time, and that you can see like some actual tangible result. So with that last question, any question? One question. One and final question.
Hi. So I used to live in Singapore. I'm from the Bay Area, and now I'm moving to Japan. And you mentioned that a lot of Asian markets, they have to go global from day one. But actually in Japan, what I've seen is that that's not necessarily the case. The startup ecosystem is very nascent there, especially relative to other mature markets. So, you know, what are your observations on that, and how can we kind of help up-level that overall ecosystem to help export some of those domestic startups?
Yeah, I think I can talk a little bit, but I'm not sure I'm the right person. Actually, before the startup, I used to work for Google Japan for more than 1 year, and actually, we are like ex-college, and actually, when I quit my job at Google Japan, all my ex-Googler friends, you know, said, "Oh, what a pity! Why you quit like such a good company and start a so tough journey?" Because in their mindset, startup, there's no opportunity, not only in Japan, but also no opportunities outside of Japan. But there do some like good examples. There are also some like good case we can follow. Do you know for example, there's one game very popular, kind of like I don't know how to say, it's like a fox, like a it's a Japanese developed app, and with only Japanese language, but it's now the top revenue and the top download app in China. Actually, there has a lot of opportunities. If you can see the trend, if you can open the minded and see the opportunity, there are also a lot of things out there. Yeah.
So I have a couple of examples. One is Flappy Bird, which is from Vietnam, super popular for all over the world. And then second, Udemy, the original founder is actually from Turkey. So I think like the key thing that if any of you guys are international, find your US partner that are really great in that particular vertical. Never say anything about, hey, I am from Japan and I am looking for a partner. You don't say that. You say that I'm the best gaming developer in the world, happen to come from Japan. Doesn't even matter. The key thing is that like-minded people in that vertical want to get together. And they only going to see your work. It's so great. Not because like you're from wherever. So like, think about that. If you're new in town, go find the people who are working on your like vertical and start having technical conversation and like help each other out. And then you automatically find your group of, your own clan and continue to grow in the US.